Hi there, thanks for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make one of these little needle felted bunnies. Now, I know you're going to think I'm bunny mad because the last video I did was a bunny too, but the last bunny was a much smaller one than one I'm making here. But with Easter just around the corner, I thought it was a good opportunity to make yet another bunny. Slightly different to the one I made before though. So I hope you like her. Watch the video and I'll show you how to make her. See you in a bit. So being this close to Easter, I thought it was an ideal time to make another Easter bunny. Now, don't think I'm bunny mad. I do actually make other things in needle felting, but hey, it's Easter, so why not? Let's have another bunny. Now, the bunny I'm making today is going to be quite different from this little miniature one we made in a video the other day. It's going to be bigger than this. It's probably going to be about 10 centimeters tall, standing, sort of sitting upright, perhaps holding an Easter basket full of eggs or something like that. Just to give a quick summary for needle felting in case anyone's not familiar with it. Needle felting is when you get these special barbed needles. I say barbed, they've got little spikes on the end of the shaft here. And if you can see them glittering in the light, there's little spikes on them. They're really tiny. There's some there, really tiny little barbs. But if you run your nail up them, your sort of nail sort of gets stuck on the barbs a little bit. And these barbs pull. You stab them into the wall and they pull the strands of the wall through. And if you do that lots of times, gradually the wall becomes more solid and then you can start making structures out of it. It is a long process. It's not a quick hobby. It takes quite a few hours to make a piece. But to be honest, it's incredibly therapeutic. Got any worries in your life, then just stab away. And you'll forget about all your worries. You'll just be concentrating on your stabbing, for want of a better word. It's a wonderful hobby. You do get different size needles. Well, they have different sort of barbs on them and different shapes. So if you've just got the one needle, just use the one needle. You can do most things with one needle, to be honest. You might also see on my stand, I've got holders. So this is just a holder for a needle felting needle. You just take the wooden bit out like this and the needle just slots in that groove and then you pop that in the holder. Just makes it slightly more comfortable to hold because obviously you've got a bigger end to it to hold. That's the same, but just a slightly different style holder. You've also then got holders that hold more than one needle. So this is my trusty 3 needle holder. This is actually quite nice. It's really good for sculpting because you can sort of use it at an angle and sculpt pieces, especially larger pieces. Really good, that one is. I've also got this one here that has 4 needles at it. To be honest, it's not that useful unless you're doing something really large. It tends to sort of flatten all the pieces you're using because you have to put quite a lot of pressure on it to use it. If you're doing lots of needle felting, it's probably worth getting one of those, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. And I've also got another 4-prong needle. That's probably more useful because the needles are closer together. But again, you do have to put a lot of pressure on them. You've got what's called wet felting, which is when you use water and soap to make pieces and then you sort of stab the pieces on at the end. These holders might be better for wet felting. I don't personally do wet felting, so I wouldn't know. But I don't actually find them that useful for needle felting, I will be honest, unless you're making really large pieces. I have made some life-size pieces, sort of tends to be like heads that mount on the wall. These sort of 4-pronged ones are useful for those really large pieces, but I wouldn't say they're useful for small pieces that we're making today. So if you've only got the one needle and no holder, brilliant. That's all you need, really. The other things are just things you can buy as you go through with your needle felting journey. You also can get finger protectors. These are my finger protectors. They don't match. I've lost the matching one for this one. This is still my favourite one. It's got a bit of a shape to it. They're just leather protectors. So I guess if you had a pair of old leather gloves, you could use those, cut the ends off, and they just go over your fingers. They are useful for a lot of things, but it's still really easy to stab the wrong finger. I've got a raw habit of putting these on and then holding it with the fingers that don't have anything on them and then stab those anyhow. And also they're not invaluable. The needles will go through them. They're only leather. Now, I'm probably not going to wear these today because they do get in the way of being able to see what I'm up to a bit. But just beware, you can buy these and they do help protect your fingers quite a lot, especially when you're doing more delicate things. So we'll get started. I'm going to use one of my needles that I've got a holder today, just because it's a little bit more comfortable. And we'll start off. So this is just white wool. So it's wool that's come off a sheep, hasn't been spun. So so you can't knit or crochet with it yet. And it's called Core Wool, C-O-R-E wool. Lots of suppliers sell it just as core wool. Core wool just means they don't specify what particular sheep it comes off. It's just great for making sort of basic structures. And the bunny I'm going to make today is going to be white, so he's going to be this sort of colour. So sometimes what you would do is you would use this wool as the inside of a piece, and then you would put a colour, a prettier colour over the top, or a more natural colour over the top. I'm going to want mine to be holding probably a basket of eggs or something like that. So I want the basket to stand out more. So I'm just going to use white wool. So I'm just going to use this core wool. It's actually really good as a finishing product too. And I'm going to start by stabbing. And you literally stab a lot. We're going to start off with the body. So I'm going to give it a rough sort of shape. So you just sort of fold the wool onto itself to give it a rough shape and then stab it into place. And by folding it, it's already giving it a rough shape. Now the piece I'm going to make is probably going to be about 10 centimetres-ish tall. I do use the word ish in there because who knows, as I say, I tend not to plan when I make my pieces. I tend to just like to go with the flow. Already you can see that it's already becoming a bit firmer, isn't it? You know, we've only literally just started and already it's firming up quite nicely. Now, one of the big debates in needle felting world is how firm do you felt? Now, I tend to felt quite firmly. Part of that is by felting firmly, the structures stay the shape they're supposed to be and they don't really change. Now, I've been needle felting for 7 years and I've got pieces that I made 7 years ago. They're still exactly the same as they were when I first made them. And that's because I felt quite firmly. And obviously, the more firm you felt, the more of a firm structure it is, and the wool was not going to move. If you felt really loosely, which some people do, which is great, and they make the most amazing things, I find that the structures kind of move around as you move them to dust them and stuff like that. So I think it's fine if they're just like in a display cabinet, but all my pieces are just around the house, being moved, being dusted. So yeah, I tend to like to felt quite firmly. And I guess the way I would describe it would be that if you were to get a tennis ball's got a little tiny bit of give in it, hasn't it? I felt, so it's not quite as firm as a tennis ball, but it's sort of heading on towards firmness of a tennis ball. Yeah, so probably not a professional tennis ball, because I'd imagine they're harder, but the sort of ones you would buy for the kids to play with, that sort of firmness, you know. Or for your dogs to play with. So one of the sort of cheaper tennis balls you buy from like a bit of a fun sort of toy shop type thing. And so they're firm, but they've got a bit of sponginess. So as you see, it's firming up, but it's still got an awful lot of sponginess. We can sort of squeeze it between our fingers and it almost goes down flat, doesn't it? So, but we'll carry on. So say this is the body. It's just going to be a basic structure. And then we'll put the head on and then the ears, arms, and a couple of little legs. So I don't want it to be too big. I want it to sort of be I guess, sort of this sort of size, and then the ears on the top, I guess. So I just carry on stabbing. I say it's quite a long process, needle felting, but it's really, really, really good fun. If you've never tried it, give it a go. It's really therapeutic. You don't have to do it all in one go. You can just do half an hour, whatever you want, 10 minutes, come back to it later. You don't have to really remember where you got to. It's not like with knitting where you've got to sort of count your stitches and remember where you've got to. You can just literally just put it down, come back to it as many times as you want. And you can make anything. Whatever your imagination takes you, you can make. So you can make animals, you can make houses, you can make toadstools, make people. I've seen people make life-size structures as well, so you can go as large as you want. I've seen life-size people made of needle felting, miniature villages made of needle felting. It's amazing what people make with it. So because I want my body to be about 10 centimetres long, the body's a bit small at the moment, isn't it? So in order to make it bigger, what we'll do is we'll just get some more of this lovely core wool and we'll just wrap it. Take that out, a bit of black stuff in there, a bit of black wool. And we'll just wrap it around the body to add a bit more substance to the body and a bit more height to the body. You just get the core wool and you wrap And then you can stab that into place. Increase the height a little bit, so I'm going to use the extra wool at the top and the bottom just to help increase the height of the body a little bit, because I want to make it sort of bigger all round. I want to make it a bit fatter and a bit longer too. Now, of course, I could have started off with more wool. It's quite tricky to sort of estimate how much wool you're going to need for a piece, and I think I was just too busy chatting to be concentrated on what size I was doing. So I'm not used to chatting when I need a felt, to be honest. Again, we're stabbing. So the structure, the bit of the body we've already done is nice and solid inside. So here we are, we're just adding this extra wool to the outside of it, so it becomes part of the main structure. Here we are, we're sort of making it bigger, top and bottom, and around the middle too. Trying to keep my fingers out of the way of the needle, so it's really easy to stab yourself. I usually need a felt when I'm watching TV, I have to be honest. So yeah, sometimes I don't pay much attention to what I should be doing, and that's a bit more tricky. Obviously, the stabbing is quite a lot of pressure on your wrists and your arms and what have you. So if you find it gets too much, you get any pain, you can just take a break. So you can just leave it any time, come back to it later, go and have a stretch, go and have a tea, go and have a coffee, leave it for days on end, as long as you want, really. One thing I will say is that clothes moths really do like these woolen structures. So if you live in the sort of house or the countryside where you've got a lot of clothes moths, it's well worth trying to protect them from clothes moths. I moved from a town to a village about 3 years ago, and I used to have clothes moths in the house, didn't think anything of them, and they never really did any damage, so I just used to let them be. And then I moved to the countryside, and they do so much damage here. And they literally got inside all my needle-forged structures. So now my house is covered in like lavender, cloves moth balls, and everything now. So yeah, just be aware of that. It's a bit of a better size. It was quite tiny before, wasn't it? So it's getting better. By the time you put a head on that and the ears, I think it's going to be about the 10 centimeters ish. I'm looking for. So I do use the word ish quite a lot. So at the moment, it's a bit like egg shape for the body, so that's okay. That's what we want. And then we'll look at doing the head. So the head, we get some more of this wool. And this is going to be sort of more of a round shape. So we'll roll the wool, I won't use quite as much of that, into like a ball to start with. Wool's quite handy. You can use your hands and just sculpt it and felt it a fair bit to begin with, actually. So you can roll it into arms. And here I am just sort of rolling it into a bit of a ball shape for the head. Some wool rolls better than others. This one doesn't seem to really want to roll that much. But there we go, got a bit of a ball shape, and it's already beginning to bond together a little bit. And then we'll put some more wool over the top of that and bond it all in. And then we'll stab the head in the same way as we stab the body. But these fibres at the bottom here, we leave those loose, and then we'll use those to attach the head onto the body. You do sometimes get, and that was a bit of a black strand of wool in the white wool. You do sometimes get other colours in your wool. I tend to, mine getting mixed with other colours as I use them from time to time. But obviously, wool does come off of sheep, and sheep lives in fields. So occasionally you'll find a bit of dried grass in their wool. Obviously, it's an organic substance. It's sort of to be expected, really. It just goes to show the sort of the history of the sheep and how they sort of live their lives, really. So, I think by the time wool is sort of spun, it loses any sort of debris that might be in it. But at this stage, you will sometimes find you'll get little bits of grass in the wool. I say it just makes it more real, really, doesn't it? You know, when the sheep get their winter coat shorn off, they've obviously been in the field all winter and they've got bits and pieces in their coat, haven't they? Now, you do have some large suppliers that sell wool, but you've also got an awful lot of sort of independent suppliers selling wool as well. A lot of the time, these people keep small flocks of sheep. Some of them are non-meat sheep, which means they're kept sort of as pets, for want of a better word. And they don't eat the sheep, but they do obviously shear them in the summer, and then they'll sell the wool on. So a lot of my wool actually comes from people who keep non-meat sheep. So a lot of needle felting people will keep sheep themselves, and they obviously then use the wool that they get from their sheep in their pieces, and then they'll sell on any surplus. So that's quite nice, and you get a bit of a history of who the sheep are, even what their names are, what breeds they are, and you'll be able to buy a particular bit of wool from a particular sheep. Of course, as people keep them, and these particular flocks are more like pets, they've got characteristics that go with all the different sheep as well. If you want to make things smaller, what you can do is you can roll them in your hands to bond the wool together. I want to try and keep this loose down the bottom though, so I'm just sort of using my hands to sort of squeeze the fibres together inside the structure. Or you can just stab the fibres closer together, make it firmer, and the firmer a piece goes, the smaller it will go. The firmer it goes, I guess the less air there is between the fibres of the wool, and the smaller the piece will go. You also find different wool behaves differently as well. You get lots of different types of wool. It's been a fascinating journey learning about all the different types of sheep and all the different types of fleeces that sheep have. I used to kind of think that pretty much one sheep, you know, one breed of sheep is the same as another breed of sheep, but oh no, their fleeces are so different, and it's really fascinating to learn. And some are really silky and soft, some are very coarse. And of course that then reflects when you then get their wool and you're trying to needle felt with it. So certain types of breeds are good for certain types of pieces that you might want to make, and other sorts of breeds are better for other pieces you might want to make. So it's a fascinating journey. There's just so much to learn. And the three-way one, as you can see, it's much quicker to work on, and it's sort of moving the fibres much quicker than the single one. And already it's going a bit flat, but I can sort of turn it into a circle shape again quite easily. But it's making it quite smaller quite quickly. You do have to be more careful with your fingers using the multi-tools though, because it's so easy to miss where they are. And one needle's painful enough. You don't want to get 3 in your finger, believe me. Oh, sorry, my mat does like to move around somewhat, so my apologies. There we go. So we're going to offer that up to the body and see what size it is in comparison to the body. Oh, it's difficult to see with all those fibres sticking out the bottom, isn't it? It looks a bit like an octopus or something. They always do. So I'd say that's probably about right. I like bunnies to have quite large heads, and you have big, large ears. It makes them quite quirky. It's not going to be a realistic bunny, as you'll probably gather, because it's holding a basket full of eggs. That's probably about right. And then I should pop the ears on as well. And say we can always make it smaller. If we still think it's too big, we can just fold it down a little bit more, make it a bit smaller. If we think it's too small, we can just add a little bit more wool. So that's the thing with needle felting. It's a very forgiving hobby. You can add more wool as you need to, or take it away. Obviously, it's harder to take wool away once it becomes quite firm structure. But you can, it's not ideal, but you can cut the wool if you end up having to. I mean, cutting isn't ideal because you end up with very harsh lines, which you then have to sort of felt together, but it is possible you can do that. Oh, there you go, I got my finger there. Wasn't too bad, just a little one. Wasn't paying attention. Got this finger here, so this is what I do. I hold it with these and I forget about these fingers. So here I am, just sort of felting the neck in, and then we use these long fibres that we left just to felt the head onto the body. By leaving the long fibres, it makes it easy, because otherwise we just have two balls that we're trying to stick together, and that's quite hard. But with the long fibres, it just sort of makes it easier, makes them all bond together. As you can see, I'm looking a bit like an owl at the moment, or a chick or something. And needle felting pieces do go through metamorphosis. They start off looking like one thing, and then they look like something else, and then they look like something else, and then eventually they look like what you want them to look like. So that's quite normal. So if you're making something and it looks like a completely different animal or blob, don't worry, all will come well in the end. Okay, so I'm just going to firm up his bottom a bit. Although obviously we're going to put some legs on him yet, so we don't need to worry too much about his bottom. But if we can just firm it up, it means he can stand a bit more squarely on the bottom. Okay, so we've now got a very stylized little animal. Looks like a chick. It will look like a bunny, honestly, I promise you. So I think we're going to do the ears next, because ears always make bunnies look like bunnies. So we're going to do the ears, and then we'll shape the face, because obviously the face is just really flat at the moment. We'll shape the face so it looks more like a bunny face. But I think we'll get the ears on first, but then that gives us an idea as to where his mouth should be and the eyes should be. And then we can carry down and do the arms and do the legs, and then give him his basket and then see if he needs anything on his head. I'm calling it a he. He's wearing an Easter bonnet. It'd probably be a she, but who knows? There we go. Right. Okay, so ears we are then. So again, with the ears, we'll just take a bit of the white wool. Oh, we've got a bit of glittery and stuff in there. That's rather nice. And with the white wool, we'll just fold it round on itself. So it becomes like this. And already it's beginning to look a little bit like an ear, isn't it? It's sort of ear shape. And then we'll just stab the ear. And don't worry, at the moment it's a very large ear. It will be at this stage. We'll gradually make the ear smaller, so it's more in keeping with the size of the bunny we've got here. What you're going to want to do as well is you're going to want to pick the piece up off the foam on a reasonably regular basis. Otherwise, it will become bonded with foam, and then it's tricky. It will sometimes, especially if your foam starts disintegrating, it will pick up bits of foam in it. And also the fibres get too embedded, and every time you pick it up, it sort of loses its structure a little bit. So you're going to want to pick it up, turn it over. And the more firm it becomes, you want to stab sort of slightly less deeply as well. So we're barely going into the foam at this point, just ever so slightly. We don't want those fibres getting too deeply embedded into the foam mat. And here I am putting the ear on its side now to begin to sort of sculpt the shape of it a little bit more. And we can use the needle to sort of just loop these sort of fibres on the back into the back of the ear. So I'm felting the ear sort of on its side now rather than on its back and front. Just using the needle to sort of felt those loose fibres into place. And sort of making it sort of ear shaped. It's a bit blobby at the end, but we'll come on to that yet. And by using it on its side, sort of making the ear thinner as well. You're going to want to use a certain amount of wool for the ears. Otherwise, if they're too thin, they're quite difficult to structure and they won't stand where you want them. You won't be able to shape them the way you want them. And like sometimes you can have ears that are quirky. You could have one ear that's up, one ear that's down, out to the side, sort of more inquisitive, however you choose to have your bunny ears, really. Got a bit of loose wool here. It hasn't quite been bedded in yet, so I'm just going to bed that in and then shape the end of the ears a little bit. You can see I'm using my fingers here just to give it a bit of a shape as well. You can do that quite a lot. Use your fingers to sort of shape the wool, and then the needle to sort of finish putting it into place. Now I am going to move over to a different size needle at this point. So don't worry if you only got the one size needle, just use what you've got. You can felt anything with the size needle you've got pretty much. But I've got a slightly finer needle, and this is really handy for sort of finishing off more finer things like ears. Again, I'm leaving all these loose fibres at the bottom. I don't want to tuck those in because I'm going to use them to attach the ear onto the head. And so the loose fibres are just easier to attach to the head. If you had a firm sort of sharp end there, it would be harder to felt the sharp end onto the head because the head's already sort of just flat. But by leaving these loose, you can see already it's going to be easy just to sort of put a needle through them and felt them onto the back of the head. Aha, there we are. Getting ear shaped. Just going to tuck these fibres in the back of the ear away a little bit. You don't want too fluffy on the back. I don't mind my pieces being quite fluffy because obviously they are animals, and animals are quite fluffy, aren't they? Funny enough, I saw a rabbit in one of my fields behind my house the other day. It was rather sweet. Just sort of sat there watching me. Didn't seem particularly scared. Funny, I live in the countryside, and that's the first rabbit I've seen since we've lived here, so they're obviously not that common in the area we're in. Right. And bunnies do tend to have a bit of a point at the end, don't they? So we'll just pop a little point in the end of his ear. There we go, that's not too bad. And we'll offer it up to the head. I think that's quite nice. And we will make another ear in a minute. I'll probably fast forward through that because you don't need to watch me make another ear. So bunnies do have pinks on the inside of their ears, don't they? Now I do have some pink wool here that you can probably see to the side of the camera. All different colours pinks. So you've got a pale pink, sort of slightly brighter pink, this lovely sort of more burgundy coloured pink. It's quite nice, that one, isn't it? But I think today I fancy going for something quite bright. We're doing an Easter bunny, so I fancy he's going to be quite bright coloured. I think the eggs are going to be quite bright, but I quite fancy the pink on him to be quite bright as well. So I'm going to use a nice bright coloured pink today. So I'm going to pop the rest of the pink wool to one side. And then I'm going to get some of this wool, just tear off a little bit, and then pop this on the inside of the ear here to give the idea of the bunny having pink inside their ears. Now here I'm only felting really gently. I don't ideally want the pink to come out the back of the ear. It quite often does, but I don't really want it to, so I'm not going all the way through the ear. I'm just literally just being really gentle, just popping it into the ear without going all the way through. So you can see the needle's not going all the way through most of the time. Occasionally I get it wrong and it goes all the way through, which is why we end up with pink on the back. But ideally I don't want to end up with too much pink on the back. I also don't want the pink going all the way down here. This bit's going to attach to his head, so I'm just going to bring the pink round and use it actually in the ear. Pointing at the ear a little bit. Ah. And there we go, we've got like a pink inside to the ear there. I don't think that's too bad, really, is it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another ear, similar to this one, with a pink inside. I should probably speed through that so you don't have to see me make another ear. And then we'll pop the ears on and we'll do his face, or we'll do his nose at least. We'll put the eyes on probably last because it's just easier to do the eyes last. And then we'll look at doing the arms and the legs. So I shall carry on with the ear and I'll see you in a bit. So we've now got 2 little ears with the pink inserts. So we're going to offer these up to the bunny's head and see what they look like. And I think they probably look okay, don't they? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first one. I'm just going to felt that onto the back of his head. You can see some of the pinks come through a bit here. Not going to worry too much about that. But you could put a little bit of white wool over that if you wanted to cover it up. You can see because we left the long fibres on the ear nice and loose, it makes it really easy to attach the ear onto the bunny, going right down the head. There we go, got an ear. So we've got a bit of a line here. What I should do is I should probably add a bit more wool to even that out. And we've still got to do the bunny's face yet on the head. So we've still got quite a lot of work to do on his head. So I'm not going to worry too much about that for now, because we can work that in when we're doing the face. And I'm going to pop this ear over this side here. And again, I felt that in onto this side. It's worth leaving them loose-ish at this stage, not totally loose so they wobble around, but loose-ish. If you decided you wanted it a little bit more this way or that way, you've still got a bit of movability in the wool at this stage. And again, this has got these lovely fibres down the back, which makes it really easy to attach it to the back of the head. You might be wondering why I'm not using my needle with its holder there. Absolutely no reason whatsoever. I just picked up this one instead. This is exactly the same needle here as you've got in this one here. I just picked up the loose needle and started stabbing with it. So no reason at all. If anything, that would actually be slightly more comfortable on my hand at this stage. But so there we go. We've got a couple of ears. So I always find it's fascinating how you put ears on a bunny and suddenly it looks less like a chick and more like a bunny. I'm probably going to want his ears sort of more spread out. I think that's more of a quirky look, isn't it? So I'm just going to put the ears to one side a little bit. So we've still got quite a lot of movability. So if we decide we don't quite like where the ears go, we can adjust it. You can always tear them off and put them back on again if you wanted to, if you disliked where they were too much. Okay, that ear got a little bit low, so I'm just going to pull him up a little bit. See, we've still got a bit of play, so we can sort of pull him up a bit. And there we go. We've got 2 little ears. Now, obviously, bunnies don't have completely flat faces, do they, like this? I mean, there's no bunny who's got a flat face like that. So what we're going to do is going to give him some little cheeks. So we'll get a little bit of the white wool again. I don't think we're going to need too much because it's only quite a small piece. And we'll just gradually build up around where his nose is going to be. So his nose is probably going to be about here. Just get a little bit of wool and stab of that. I'll do the same, a bit of wool on the other side. Here, I'm just trying to give the impression of those cheeks that bunnies have. So I'm just doing a little bit to begin with to see what it looks like, and then I can add more if I need to, shape it if I need to. I'm just going to swap to my finer needle because the trouble is with those needles, they sort of take the wool and sort of flatten it down if you're not careful. So might be a little bit on the low side, but we can sort of make them a bit bigger. I think we will make them a little bit bigger, maybe bring them up a little bit as well. Just add a little bit more wool and felt that over the top. Probably need a bit of shape on his nose and those sort of cheeks. There, so you can sort of see the cheeks are coming along, can't you? It was wonderful with Niederfeld. You just let your imagination run riot. So if you like bunnies with enormous cheeks, go for it. If you like bunnies with... I have made quite a few bunnies over the years. They've gone and lived with other people over the years. I think I made my friend's daughters a couple of bunnies. I made my mum bunny one Mother's Day. I made a mother-in-law bunny for Easter, funny enough. That stood on a stand. It had lots of Easter eggs around it. I made another friend a bunny for her birthday, and this bunny was holding this big floppy flower. It's rather nice, that one. I'm just going to add a little bit of wool up here for his nose. At the moment, the face doesn't look too bunnyish, but that's where we start. And then you sort of keep adding until you're happy with what you've created, really. I say I don't really plan in advance. I haven't made one of these before. So, you know, you're sort of joining me on the design process a little bit here. So apologies if you sort of think, what's she doing? It's like, yeah, sometimes it's like I do something and then think, oh yeah, I don't like that. And take it off, do something different. One thing you can do that if you watch my miniature bunny video you'll be familiar with is you can use normal sewing pins as eyes to get a feel for where you're going to want your bunny's eyes to be. Now you can get completely different appearances. If you have the bunny's eyes close, they look, I don't know, sort of cartoony, I guess. You could have them on their head. I don't know, looks a bit strange. Real life bunnies have eyes on the side of their heads. This one's going to be looking forward, so I don't want his eyes too far on the side of his head. But something like this, quite low down as well. If you put the eyes low down, they look more cute, sort of more babyish. If you notice with baby animals, they've got eyes that are quite wide apart and quite low down on their faces. And it gives them sort of a cute look. So I think I quite like that for Niederfelting. Niederfeld's just a bit of fun, isn't it, at the end of the day? But by using these pins, you do have to be careful because they stick out the back. They're just normal sewing pins. It gives you an idea as to where you think the eyes are going to want to be, which then means it's easier to shape the mouth and the nose around that. Now, these pins I'm using here are much smaller than the eyes I'm going to use. But equally, it does just gives you a rough idea, doesn't it? Which, and I did say we put the face on last, but maybe we won't. Maybe we'll give the bunny a face and then we'll do the rest of his body and his arms and his legs as well. Because at least then he looks like he's something, doesn't he? You see, he's got a bit of a shape to his face now. He looks quite stern at those eyes in there, doesn't he? I don't think I want my bunny to look that stern. He's supposed to be happy. He's delivering Easter eggs. See, we've still got this line where we attached the ears onto the back. So I'm just going to take those pins out for now. And then we're going to use a little bit of wool around the back just to cover up the line where the ears attached. You see, I just used my needle there just to pull the fibres to where I wanted them to be. It's quite handy, you can do that. Just be careful when you do it. It's really easy to bend these needles. You don't want to bend them because if you bend them, then that's when they can break. Again, when you're using a needle, you want to go in and out of the wool straight. You not want to be bending it or pushing it in the wool and bending it or anything like that. It's straight in, straight out type thing. Because it is easy to bend the needles and you don't want to be using a bent needle because that's when they can break. Again, if you use the leather finger pads I showed you earlier, because they're quite firm as well, it's really easy to bend a needle on them or break a needle even on them. I've had a few inquiries about the little dogs that I made for one of my doll's houses, so I shall probably do a video on making a little dog soon as well, a miniature dog. And I've got the little miniature dog here, so I should do a video on how to make a little miniature dog like this soon as well, to go in a doll's house or a little toy for Barbie doll or something like that. Obviously, wouldn't suggest little children play with Niederfelting things. because, you know, the eyes could come off and stuff. But if they're an older child who aren't going to be swallowing things, it's probably fine. So we'll put the eyes back in. Obviously, these aren't permanent eyes. These are just placeholders for where we think the real eyes want to go. And I shall have a little play with these. So what do we think? That's quite cute, isn't it? The eyes are quite far apart. But that's quite cute. Ooh, of course, I mean, doing that, don't put the needle in your finger like I just did. That one there's a little bit high, isn't it? So I'm just going to raise that down a little bit. And see what they look like from both sides. That one's a bit more forward, isn't it? So just going to move these pins, and then I think we're going to put the eyes on. Okay, so I've now gone and got the eyes that I'm going to use on this bunny. Now these are eyes with a little metal spike on the back. I don't actually know what they're called, I'm afraid. And these are quite handy for using eyes in structures. What I'll do is, I won't do it while we're on camera, but I would put a bit of PVA glue on the back of the spike and then pop it in the bunny to keep them firm in there, stop them wiggling around. But I'll do that later off camera because I don't have my PVA glue to hand. So once you've worked out where you'd like your eyes to go, as I say, it's ideal to do it with the little pins. The pins are smaller than the eyes I'm going to use. I'm going to use quite large eyes there. You take the pin out, keep a note for where you want the hole to be, then use one of these little spikes, which I must admit, again, I'm afraid I don't know what it's called, and put that through the wall to decide where the eye is going to go. And then you can pop the pin with the eye in there, like so. And again, on the other side, keep a note of where your pin is coming out from and use this to poke a little hole. Careful it doesn't come out the other end and stab you in the finger. And wiggle that in. So there we go. We've got two little eyes. I say I would normally glue them into place, but I will do that later off camera. And quite often what I do with the eyes as well is I get a little tiny bit of black wool and I just put, and again I am talking, it's a small piece or this sort of size, and I put that over the eye just to give a little bit more definition as well. And it just sort of gives a bit of a shape to the eye rather than just being a circular eye, which is quite nice. You can have it going over the top or to the side, and depending on how you have the black will depend on the shape it gives to the eye. Depending on how you have it, can change their characters somewhat and their sort of a mood a little bit, really. So if you have it coming down too low below the eye, it makes them look a little bit sad. I guess they've got them droopy eyes, haven't they? And that's what we associate with sadness. So, and then to make the shape of the mouth and the nose, what I quite often do is I just use normal thread. So this is just normal sewing thread, and I cut off a bit of sewing thread. I usually double it up, and then I use a fine needle to stab the sewing thread onto the wool. Sometimes it's not always that easy because it doesn't want to hold it in place. But I find you could do this with wool, but to be honest, I find wool a bit heavy for this. Yeah, you can sort of see coming a nose on that side, so I'll just do the same on this side. So now we're going to move on to the bunny's arms. So to do that, we get some more of this white wool. We want a longish bit, like so. Well, I'll just clear my tools up because otherwise it's getting difficult to see what I'm doing on my mat, isn't it? Tidy some of this stuff away. Right. So we'll get a piece of wool and we'll just start rolling the wool so it becomes long. Like I say, it's going to be stylized hands holding a basket, I think. By rolling it, you sort of already get a bit of structure to the wool. go. The arms aren't going to want to be too long. They're going to want to sort of be here and sort of stop in the middle here. So again, I get my needle. I get the one that's actually in its holder, and then I'll just start shaping a hand, a little arm for the bunny. They're going to be quite stylized. They're not going to be 100% accurate hands or anything like that. This is obviously a very stylized bunny with bright pink ears. Again, with this, like we did with the ears, you want to keep taking it off the mat, otherwise it will get stuck into the foam mat. And then when you pull it up, obviously it brings up all the fibres that's stuck into the mat too. So you want to keep moving it around. You want to be felting from all angles as well. You don't just want to be felting from one side, because otherwise you have a nice firm side and the rest of it will be really loose. Again, we'll leave all this loose at the end. There's probably too much fibre at the end, but we can remove some of that if we don't need it all. And we'll just felt a little hand into place. You can see the end is still quite floppy, so we will very carefully hold it in our fingers and felt the end of it to firm at the end there. You could be using your leather protectors at that point, or you can hold it between a piece of card as well to keep your fingers safe when you're doing something like this. So I'm going to want him holding a basket of eggs, I think. So we'll just offer up the arm and see if that's about right. It is, isn't it? So if it came across the body like that, that's okay, isn't it? With the basket here, obviously he's got to have his legs yet. We're not going to need all this at the back. It's too much wool. It will change the structure of the size of the bunny. So I'll just remove some of that loose fibres we've got at the back there. And I'm just going to make another hand similar to that one to go here, and then the basket can sit in the middle. Okay, so here we've got two little arms ready to attach to the bunny. So I'll get the first one and we'll just pop him roughly in place and then start felting it down. Again, because we left these lovely long fibres here, it means it's very easy just to attach it to the bunny. I just felt that down, put the fibre around the back of the body. Make sure the arm's in roughly the right spot. I think that's not too bad, is it, when the other one goes there? I say the basket's going to be here. I think that's okay. There we go, little arm. And we'll do the same with the other arm. We'll pop that on the other side. And we will attach that. Oh, little holders come to pieces. They tend to do that a little bit, so just pop the needle in there like that. The wood's just literally pushed in there, so that does happen from time to time. And then we'll pop the other arm on. Make sure it's roughly in the right spot as we start stabbing it in. And just tuck those fibres in. So we've got to put his bottom back feet on yet as well, so we've still got a fair bit to do. Make sure to change the shape of his body a bit. There we go, we've got two little arms. Looks like he wants to box you though, doesn't he? I'll give you a little box. Of course, what's quite nice, I mean, mine's going to be holding a basket, but you could have him with his hands on his head. You could have him sort of looking like surprised, or hands by the mouth, however you choose, really. But I think I'm just going to have him holding a basket here, actually. So we want to make some back legs now as well. So again, we'll get the same coloured white wool. Need a little bit more for this because he's going to need the feet plus then the big haunches that bunnies have. So we're going to want the big haunches and then the feet, aren't we? So what I should do here is I should just turn the wool on itself there, and that will become the haunches. And then I shall make this bit here into the foot. I just thought to myself, I've done quite well actually. I've only stabbed myself once, and that's quite good for videos. So I'm going to jinx it now, so watch out. So again, we just stab away, just putting all those fibres in together, moving it around the mat so it doesn't get too stuck on the mat at any time. I mean, the haunches at the moment are massive, but as we keep on at it, and then they gradually become smaller, and the size we want was firming up at the same time. I'm just going to use my 3-pronged needle for a bit. Just saves a little bit of time when it comes to firming up things. Don't worry if you haven't got one, you can do it with a 1-pronged needle, absolutely fine. Just takes a little bit more time, obviously, because here I'm just using 3 needles. What I have been known to do is actually use 2 needles together like that. That saves a bit of time too. Obviously, using 2 needles together like that, you've just got to be careful. You're not going to bend them or anything because it's harder to see where the 2 needles are going a little bit. So this is the sort of bunny haunches here. So the big back legs that they've got. And I'm just going to turn this bit into the front foot here. Now we're not going to leave any fibres to attach this one by just because of the way we're making this. I'm going to put a bit of a dent in there to show where the foot's going to go, and then I'll start turning this wool at the front here into a bunny's foot. You can see all this loose fibre we had at the front here is gradually being eased into being a foot. We'll just offer it up. So obviously it's quite large at the moment, so that's way too large, isn't it? So we'll keep on at that until we get that the size we want. It's still very soft at the front, so we've still got loads of play in that wool yet. Might be it's a bit thick around here. I just need to try and thin that out a little bit. I'm just going to use this needle just to firm up the fibres. I don't want to change the shape of the foot too much, I just want it to be a bit firmer because I'm going to want to put like a little paw on the bottom. At the moment that won't be possible because it's too floppy to do anything with. There we go, that's a little bit better. It's difficult to show on a video, but that is a little bit better. It's not quite as floppy as it was. Oh, excuse the pun, floppy bunny. And then we will use the same pink as we used for his ears. And we'll get the bottom of his foot. And we'll just put a little paw on him. So we'll just put the pink on there in a little paw shape. Just gently felt that into place. And for the little toe pads, we'll just use a little tiny bit of pink wool and make that into a circle to go on his pad 2, like so. I tend to do 3 little toe pads just because it looks quite nice. Just doing the 3. I didn't mess them up. I don't know how many toes bunnies have got, but just the 3 toe pads looks quite nice. And there we are. We've got a little foot that's ready to go on the bunny. So that's going to look quite cute, isn't it, once we pop that on there? But what I'll do again is I'll just make up another foot to go on the other side with the same little pad on the bottom. And then I'll see you in a bit once I've done that one, and we can look at putting those on. And then next we'll look at finishing up him up and then giving him a little basket full of eggs. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, so here we are. We now have 2 little feet to attach to the bunny. So we're going to pop those on him. I've done them so we've got like a right foot and a left foot. So we're going to pop this little foot here, offer it up, make sure we're happy with the spot, and then we're just going to stab that into place. I don't have any loose fibres on this particular one to use like I have on the others. So I'm just going to literally go through there, the haunches, and sort of stab it into the body. That's gone on quite nicely actually. And we'll do the same with this one. Offer it up, make sure we're in the right spot, just tack it on, have another look, make sure we're happy with what's going on, and we'll felt it on a little bit further. And there we go. That's his second leg on. Now both of them are quite firm, so I'm quite happy with that. And he's looking rather cute, isn't he? So he's obviously bigger down the bottom than he is at the top, which is what you'd expect. With his little arms, and we'll give him a basket yet. To say, not very happy with what's going on back here from where we put the arms on, because we can still see where the extra fibre was to put the arms on there. So we'll get some wool, some more of this white wool, and we'll just place it over the top, and then we'll use that to get rid of any lines we've got on the back of him. And again, my 3-pronged needle is quite handy for felting all this sort of more firmly into place and getting rid of any lines that you might have. There you go, that's got rid of most of the lines on the back there, so it doesn't look quite so obvious now, does it? So that's a bit better. Evened it all out a little bit more. And of course, what do bunnies have? What are they known for? Oh, little bunny rabbit tails. So I'm going to give him a bunny rabbit tail while we're here. So I'm going to give him pink tails, which is going to match the inside of his ears. We'll roll it up as much into a ball as we can. Might need to use our fingers for that rather than the palm of our hands. And then I will place the little tail on the back of him. And then we will start felting that into a little ball. And try and keep it so obviously it's a nice little round circle without losing too much of its shape. I'll move into my, oh, where's it on hiding? My thinner needle, my finer needle. So it's just handy for doing stuff like this. It sort of firms it up without changing its shape too much. That's not too bad, is it? That's quite cute. There we go, he's got his tail on the back there. So we've now got a little bunny. As I said, we were going to make a little basket for the bunny though, to make him into an Easter bunny. So what I'll do is I will get some brown wool for the basket, I think. Okay, so I'm going to make the bunny basket to put his eggs in. So I've got a bit of brown wool here, which I thought would make nice wool for the basket. I'm just going to fold it over and felt it to try and give it a bit of a basket shape. Obviously, it's not going to be a very large basket because it's a really tiny bunny, isn't he? This is much finer wool, type of wool called merino wool. And it's really fine and it's really fluffy, but it's beautiful. And it usually comes in lots of different colours, but it's quite hard to felt with because it's so fine. It takes quite a lot of bonding before it gets any structure. And you will find this as you use different types of wool. Some wool just felt so much easier than other. Like this, the core wool, it comes together nice and quickly. This wool, it just is really fine and takes quite a while to get to any structure to it. We'll try and make the basket a bit more 3D. So what I'll do is I'll add some more wool around the outside to give it a bit more shape. One thing you can do with merino wool is you can actually make your figures out of something coarser like this core wool and then use this as a top coat. So that's really handy. So you get all the beautiful colours in merino wool. It's not very good for sculpting with because it's just so fine. Unfortunately, a lot of the kits you buy from big commercial stores tend to have merino wool in their kit. So if you ever use a kit and you find it impossible to do needle felting, that would be why. It's because they're giving you wool like this to felt with and it's really hard. Let's have a little look and see if we've got a bit of a basket shape. I think that's not too bad. I do want to give him a loop for the basket too, and then we'll have a little egg sitting at the top of the basket. So I'm going to move a lot of this wool from the top, so I don't think we need it. And then I'm going to try and give the basket a bit of a handle. So I'm going to just twist the fibres here so they become a bit like a boop shape, and then just felt them loosely into place just for now. At the moment it looks like a deer or something, doesn't it, with antlers. I'm going to want to felt in the top of the basket. I don't want that sticking up the top. I'm going to want to felt that down, so I'll move into another needle, so it's a bit sort of firmer needle just to get that top of the basket felted. So it looks like it's got a sort of scoop to the top of the basket. Put it down a little bit, it's becoming a bit small, isn't it? I want the basket to be too small. I might need to make the basket a bit bigger actually. So I think we'll do the hoop now. So we'll get the two ends of the material and we'll just attach them together so we get a bit of a hoop, and then we can see what we're doing with the basket a little bit more. And we'll just bond those two together so they become a hoop. And then I'm going to, that's not too bad, is it? I think we can probably get a little egg out of there so it looks a bit like an egg basket. And then we'll get some different coloured wool. So I think a nice bright yellow for the egg would be quite nice. So I'm going to pull off a bit of wool here and make this into egg shape. So again, just fold it so it becomes a bit like a lozenge, I guess, isn't it? And start felting that. Again, this is really soft wool, so it's quite tricky to felt it into place. I'll just felt this down until it becomes an egg shape. And then we'll get some wool to put a bit of a pattern on the egg. So you've got pinks or greens. I think we use something different to what we used on the bunny to distinguish it, so it doesn't look like it's part of the bunny. So perhaps I will use the green on the egg, I think. And then we'll put another bit colour along the bottom of the egg as well to give it a bit of decoration on the bottom. So I think I might use a bit of orange perhaps. The egg as though it's coming out of the basket. So let's just try this on for size. So we've got a little basket here that we'll have sort of, I think maybe we'll hold it like this actually, so we get to see more of the egg. And then we can have the little egg poking out the top like that, and that's quite cute, isn't it? Okay, so I'm just going to attach the basket onto the bunny. I'm actually just going to felt that onto his belly. I think I'm going to have his hands come down like this, as if he's sort of holding the basket, rather than have it through his hands. So I'm going to use my needle just to felt these hands into place. If you find they won't felt into place, what you can do as well is you can put like a little stitch from the back through their hands just to hold them into place. That works quite nicely. And then I will just tuck the egg into the basket, because what we did is we just sort of tacked the basket around the edges, didn't we? But we left that free. I'm just going to tuck the egg into his basket. And then we will just use the needle just to tack the egg. There we go, and a little egg in the basket. Now, one thing I quite like doing when I'm making something like this as well is decorating them with perhaps beads and stuff. So we might see if we've got any little beads that might go on the basket to make it look a bit prettier. So like many crafters, I've literally got a ton of bits and pieces that I've kept over the years for using on certain projects. I never quite know what I'm going to need and when I'm going to need it, so I tend not to throw very much away. So to finish off the bunny, I found these little sort of iridescent, I guess like little sequin beads. They're sort of purple iridescent with blue, and I thought they looked quite cute on the basket to give it a bit of colour. And I've also got this lovely purple bow for her hair. I know bunnies don't have hair, but you know where hair would be if she had hair. And then this is just a normal sewing pin that I've used as part of the bow here as well. So like just quite pretty sewing pins. I've just sort of snipped it off so it's not as long as a sewing pin would normally be, and then popped it in her hair there. And I've also then glued her eyes into. So I'm going to call her done. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching how to make this little needle felted Easter bunny with her basket full of eggs. So needle felting is a wonderful hobby. If you haven't given it a go, please do. You just zone out and you think of nothing else other than the wool and what you're making. If you do give it a go and you make anything, let me know in the comments below. I'll be fascinated to see what you've made. Again, if you've got any comments, pop them below and I'll do my best to answer them too. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can see what I'm up to next. And thanks for watching from me and the bunny. Bye bye.